So for this arc, I want to try something a little different and focus in on the three lead characters. Gon, Killua, and Hisoka, break down what their motivations are for fighting, and examine what that means for their development in the series. The plot of the Heaven's Arena arc begins with Gon and Killua traveling to the arena in order to get some training in so that Gon can eventually fight Hisoka, and also to make some fast cash between now and September when they head to York New City. Their training up the arena floors was just supposed to be a way to set themselves up for success in the future, but things quickly get more complicated upon learning about Nen and the discovery that Hisoka has been waiting for the boys on the 200th floor. This is a short arc, so instead of going through the story beat by beat and bouncing back and forth between each character I want to discuss, I'm going to focus on each one individually, beginning with the horny magician himself. This arc really made me fall in love with the character of Hisoka. He was extremely cool and creepy in the Hunter exam, but this arc really fleshed him out a bit more as a character in a way that made him more unique than your typical shonen antagonist. I remember watching a video from Super Eyepatch Wolf, a little YouTuber you may have heard of, about why people should watch Hunter x Hunter. I'm not just shouting out some small-time YouTuber who could use my sweet boost. Something he called out about Hisoka in this arc has always stuck with me. He mentioned how Hisoka flirting with Machi and asking her out to dinner was something you don't see from an antagonist, just a little real-life moment, and that darn Wolf was right. Hisoka becomes a three-dimensional character in this arc, and honestly, I would have loved to see that dinner date. I can picture it in my head, and it doesn't necessarily end in some violent outburst like any other date I can imagine a villain like Frieza or Eneru going on. We never really have intimate moments with other villains like we do with Hisoka, and I think that's what makes him so intriguing to watch. The story isn't afraid to show him being as human as the rest, despite his obvious, severe issues. With all that said, what's really going on with Hisoka during this arc? Why does he like to fight, and why does he go out of his way to fight Gon? Well, the simple answer is he's an absolute loon who is horny for fighting, but let's take a bit of a closer look. Hisoka doesn't just run into Gon randomly and decide to fight him on a whim. No. Hisoka literally stalked Gon and Killua through the internet, saw their travel tickets, figured where they were going, and followed them there only to be waiting around the corner for them to arrive at the 200th floor. This guy planned this all out very thoroughly, and honestly, Gon should be much more concerned about his internet safety than he is. That's why I use ExpressVPN, the number one just kidding, no one is sponsoring my stank ass. So Hisoka clearly wants to fight Gon, but not until he deems Gon worthy, even after all the steps he went through to follow him, which is the push Gon needed to learn Nen in the first place. Hisoka isn't just waiting for Gon to ripen, he's actively pushing Gon in that direction for his own benefit. When he first runs into the boys, Hisoka says that he is practically a combat addict, and I think that really informs why it is that he treats Gon the way that he does. His ecstasy when fighting Gon isn't because he and Jared from Subway get along great. Don't get me wrong, Hisoka is a genuine pervert, but this sensation when fighting comes about because he realizes that Gon is becoming a more formidable fighter, which is giving him the high that he's constantly chasing. Hisoka wants Gon to get more powerful, only to satisfy his own addiction to combat and see something in Gon that could lead to an excellent fight one day, which is all Hisoka is after. We see that in this very arc in the only other fight Hisoka engages in. Hisoka vs Castro is an insane battle that demonstrates just how far Hisoka is willing to go for a good fight. The dude takes a bite out of his own severed arm. Yikes. But we also find out that Hisoka and Castro have fought before, and after Hisoka figures out Castro's double ability, he tells Castro that he only kept him alive because he had so much talent, which in Hisoka's mind, Castro has now squandered. So Gon isn't the only person that Hisoka has waiting in the wings to fight to the death. We even get the first hint of Hisoka's obsession with fighting Chrollo in this arc as well. Without knowing much about Hisoka's backstory other than he liked candy, this is about as much exploration into his motivations as I can provide. Why does Hisoka fight? Because he's addicted to combat, and like any addict, he's chasing a greater high, which is why he's pushing Gon along to get even stronger. Killua is a bit of a tougher nut to crack in this arc. Or maybe he's actually really simple to explain. The reason that Killua fights, and why he wants to fight in the arena specifically, is in order to help Gon. Really, the only reason that Killua acts in this entire arc is in order to help those he cares about, namely Gon and later on Zushi. Once Killua gets to the 200th floor with Gon, he doesn't fight anyone who hasn't directly threatened one of his friends. Upon finding out what the prize for reaching the top of the arena is, Killua loses interest and states multiple times that he's not really interested in fighting anymore. Although, one of those times he is called out. When Killua goes to size up Castro, he is totally caught off guard by Castro's abilities. When they begin talking, Killua tells Castro that he isn't interested in fighting, but Castro says that Killua's aura is telling a much different story. To me, that's the internal battle Killua is constantly fighting within himself, trying to keep the instincts he was raised to hone in check to keep himself from acting as a cold-blooded killer. We see his instincts in full effect earlier in the arc when Wing shows Killua his Ren and Killua hides in the corner like a frightened cat. Castro simply caught Killua in a moment like that. I don't think that this is the story telling us that Killua is actually lying and is truly dying for a fight. The reason that Killua doesn't have the conscious desire to continue fighting is that he has fought enough to get him to stay by Gon's side, and after the 200th floor, there is no point in him fighting except occasionally to remain on the floor with Gon. So Killua remains a pretty passive character in this arc once he reaches the 200th floor, until the trio of creeps try to kidnap Zushi. That is when Killua springs into action. And there are no half measures with Killua, he becomes a fucking nightmare to deal with. He threatens their lives, infiltrates their rooms, and overall is just messing with their heads. Killua does accept their challenges to fight, but only because they threatened Zushi and manipulated Gon. Once they stepped over the line, Killua had no trouble taking some revenge. It's clear though that Killua is just staying at the arena for as long as Gon would like. He has no burning desire to fight anyone in particular, and when Gon achieves his goal, the pair decide to leave together pretty quickly after without Killua expressing a preference either way. At this point in the story, Killua is a bit directionless and Gon has become his guide. Gon is an interesting little boy. You might not think it by looking at him or even hearing him speak, but this kid is almost as sick in the head as Hisoka when it comes to fighting. That may be an over-exaggeration, but this arc in particular has a couple of key moments that flesh out Gon's personality and motivations to show how much he's developed since his introduction before the Hunter exam. If we look back at the first arc, Gon mentions to Kurapika after his first fight with Hisoka that even though he was scared, he was pretty excited too. Gon seems to be coming to terms with that sensation during his conversation with Kurapika, so I think it's safe to say that this was the first time he felt that kind of excitement from battle. In that way, Hisoka was the inciting incident for Gon's burgeoning love of battle, and I believe both he and Hisoka get similar sensations out of a good fight. Hisoka is obviously on the extreme end of that spectrum, but I think that's why Hisoka and Gon are so drawn to each other, and Hisoka almost serves as a cautionary tale for Gon. I think this is a subtle bit of character development for Gon, and it also gives him a different kind of short-term motivation, which I think was necessary for his character, who, after the Hunter exam, would have only had the overarching long-term motivation of finding his father. Gon starts with two motivations: become a hunter, then find his dad. The development of his battle hunger slotted in and replaced the hunter motivation in a timely and seamless way. There are three separate instances in this arc that serve to really highlight this motivation for Gon. Before I get to those, I think it's pretty important that none of them come before Gon reaches the 200th floor, because that is when the battles actually become challenging for him, which goes to show that he isn't some bloodthirsty maniac who just gets pleasure out of beating up anyone. Gon is actively seeking a challenge. He wants the excitement that comes from a potentially deadly battle. So the first instance is when Gon immediately steps into the arena with Guido after learning about Nen. We see in a flashback that Wing had told Gon and Killua not to fight for 2 months, but Gon can't control his desire to fight. He can't even make it a day. He says to himself, "Sorry Wing, I just can't wait. I gotta fight." Gon wanted to test what he could do with Nen against a real opponent right away, and he pays the physical price for it, but ultimately, he got just what he wanted while outperforming what everyone expected of him. The next instance of highlighting this battle excitement, I'm trying not to call it bloodlust because I don't think that's quite what it is, maybe diet bloodlust, is during Hisoka's match with Castro. This time, Gon does listen to Wing's orders and does not watch the battle, but he begins shaking when he starts thinking about it. Gon is literally trembling with excitement at the thought of battling Hisoka himself one day soon, unable to control his body's physical reaction to the idea of that fight, almost like an addict. The final instance is of course the entire build-up to and the actual fight between Hisoka and Gon. The entire arc is centered around this fight happening, and it's truly a satisfying battle to watch unfold. Gon successfully returns the punch that Hisoka landed on him in the Hunter exam, and hands over the exam badge to Hisoka with no words needing to be said. However, the real clue into Gon's mind and motivation is when the match is coming to a close. Gon is clearly on the back foot and doesn't stand a chance at truly beating Hisoka, and yet, he is desperate to keep going. His last thoughts before Hisoka smacks him with that rubble to score the winning point is about how he can keep the match going for longer. He isn't even thinking of a way that he can win. He is just thinking of how he can keep going, how he can extend the battle because he hasn't had enough yet. Ultimately, he loses before either he or Hisoka are fully satisfied, which leaves the desire for them to fight again strong. Gon goes on to engage in many more battles after this arc, but it's here, in Heaven's Arena, that his diet bloodlust really takes shape and comes to be a defining aspect of his personality. That about wraps up my thoughts on the motivations behind the three lead characters for the Heaven's Arena arc. I apologize that this video doesn't exactly fit the theme of my theme series, but I also didn't want to just skip over this arc because I think we learn a lot about the characters here, which informs our understanding of their actions going forward in the series. I think that Gon, Hisoka, and Killua complete the first phase of their development with this arc, and it sets them all up for a brand new epic adventure in York New City, which will be the next arc I cover. I promise I'm going to have a lot more to get through and break down with that arc, so if you liked what you saw here today, why not check out some of these other videos? I cover a lot of anime topics, like my first impressions of One Piece series, but I also talk about other pop culture stuff that I like. Leaving a like would also really help me out for the algorithm gods. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to see you in the next one, but until then, I'll shut up.